Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I'm your host, Brad Swale. Today, I'm joined with Aaron Silva, a former candidate for Eanes ISD School Board, a lifelong entrepreneur and founder of Paladin-fs, a professional technology contract negotiation company for community banks and credit unions. He is also the founder of Texas Education Project 103. Aaron Silva, how are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Brad.
It's a pleasure to speak with you. I look forward to the conversation. Obviously, I guess not obvious, but in that intro, I mentioned Texas Education Project 103. I think we'll be talking about education in Texas and your experience running for school board. But I gave sort of a very brief background there. Do you want to expand on that?
On the Eanes School Board?
Well, just you as a person, your personal and professional background.
Yeah, I've, as you said, a lifelong entrepreneur, businessman, my own companies, just always run my own thing and self-made. Currently, I have a company, as you were explaining, that we very niche. We negotiate technology contracts for small banks and credit unions all across the United States. I've had this company for 18 years, small company, very successful. And, I'm just, I'll never stop, and just a business guy through and through.
Yeah. So, you also ran for school board. I happen to also live in Eanes, so I have some experience with you, but you ran for school board at Eanes, and, that's not something that everyone steps up to do, right? Why did you decide to run for the Eanes School Board?
Well, I've got two children in the district, and they've been in since kindergarten. And over time, I got to know the school more closely, kind of its operations. And, has been a general sense in the community for, I'd say really more strongly since post-pandemic, about the school sort of ebbing in the kind of the quality of the education, the sort of school, the spirit, the community spirit about the school. I've met a lot of parents that losing confidence in how the school is being operated. And so the more I looked into it as a business person, looking at a government entity as a $100 million business, I really started to understand that the school is not being run properly. And I felt that if it were a business, I was sort of looking over the hill and seeing that it was approaching what I called, even during the campaign, a success failure. Such a successful, wonderful, magnanimous district, an incredible legacy that Westlake has. And again, I just started to notice I didn't like the direction it was going, and I felt that I could step up with my business experience and make a difference effectively.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that since the pandemic, right, that it's sort of gone downhill. And I think that that's maybe the experience across the state, right? That people are more aware of what's happening in their the kids' school, whether that's through, I don't know, more involvement going to school boards and speaking, or, hearing what their kids are, hearing how the classes go on Zoom, and just maybe the overall effect of Zoom maybe not being an effective way to teach kids. Describe some of that decline that, you or others have experienced, or, since the pandemic have, describe some of that decline that's occurred.
Yeah, I think at the curriculum level, there has been for some reason, this sort of concerted effort to diminish the percentage of time that teachers spend actually talking about reading, writing, arithmetic. And there's all these other things that have entered into, the conversation between teachers and students, between teachers and parents, the administration and parents. And it's, I think gotten to a point where it's become a big distraction. And as a result, you have these employees, these incredible teachers. As we know, teachers do it for the love, not for the money, but at the end of the day, they should be paid properly. When they're hired to be a teacher. But over time, all of these other requirements are added onto them. They're a mental health therapist. They're dodging bullets now. They're being trained in the DEI arts. And, all of this just kind of compounds onto more and more focus on the outcomes on state tests, like MAPS and STARS. And so you have these employees where you pay them a certain wage, we'll say $65,000 a year when they start, and 3 or 4 or 5 years later, they're doing much, much more than they were ever asked to do at the beginning. So as a result, they feel underpaid, and that's why, we have this attrition rate of floating around 20%. So when you're turning over, in any business, when you're turning over your staff by 20%, a lot of continuity is lost. You lose your mentors. You lose the culture that's inculcated into the teaching curriculum. And as a result, quality goes down.
Yeah.
And that's what's been going on. And,
Yeah.
That's sort of the primary issue.
Yeah. So, I wanted to ask you about some of the biggest challenges facing Eanes and school districts around the state. And you brought up teacher pay, and that's certainly something that's, people pay a lot of lip service to. The teachers need to be paid more. And, I think that everyone can be fine with that. Yeah, sure, pay teachers more. I'm not sure what that number is. I'm curious if you have a number, but I think it's also interesting that you're describing the other aspects of it, that they're doing a lot more than teaching. And I want to ask you, not only about the teacher pay, but also how do we guide how do we steer the ship away from all those other things?
Yeah. Well, the reason the ship has been steered where it is, at least in Eanes, is really a lack and absence of leadership at the board level. I think for the history of schools, you have really well-intentioned, community organized type folks on these school boards, but it has become so complicated that you really don't have the intellectual capital, the business acumen, the people that really know how to make hard decisions. When I looked at the board of trustees, to this day, there's nobody that has ever signed the front of a payroll check. And so they're not wired to think like business people. And that's the kind of thinking that I think schools all across Texas, need. They need to create an environment where, smart people, good people, people with business acumen will actually step forward and step into leadership positions to steer the ship in the right direction. Relative to Eanes, Eanes is here where it's at in a massive deficit situation. Dropping their reserves will be less than 25% in the imminent future. I mean, they are in financial straits, and it has nothing to do with the state. It has completely everything to do with, at least this school district, the board of trustees have just allowed the ship to drift where it's at. Expenses have been going up and up and up. Revenue has been going down and down and down because our population has been shrinking. We can talk more about that. And here we are. And now they're in panic mode because they weren't prepared or had the experience to make tough decisions for years. And we're in a tough spot. And I know a lot of other districts are as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think even AISD, our neighbors here in Austin, are, they're about to do a tax rate election, try to get more money because they have massive deficits as well. So it seems like it's a problem across the state for sure. It's not unique to Eanes.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about the current board in Eanes, and I know this is the same across the state. Not having that experience to make the tough decisions. What are some of those tough decisions? Like how can they, what should they have done what should they have done differently? Not if there's specifics, great, but more general mindset.
Yeah, well, in general, I think the big miss in Eanes is, again, the board doesn't have the business acumen, doesn't have the clairvoyance to see around the corner with what's coming. These capabilities are usually reserved again for business people. So the big miss they've had is something I call peak Eanes. And I did a research piece during the campaign where I looked at our population and looked at our student population, our community population, our student population. And what I was able to predict was quite simple academically. I mean, we have about 7,600 students. Well, back in 2015, 2016, we had 8,500 students. And so we've declined to 7,600 students. And I tried to understand why. we're graduating about 700 students a year, but only about 400 kindergartners are coming in. So that deficit of 300 is in there, and it's been there for years. And that's because here in Eanes, people are not moving out. They're staying here for the remainder of they're going to die here.
Yeah.
And young people are not moving in because it's too expensive. And so you have this deficit. And what the school has been doing for years has been really leaning on transfers. And what I predicted, and it's coming true, that in 10 years, we'll have a population of only about 5,500 to 6,000 students. Now, you're dealing with a government entity, like Eanes is like most schools. They do not want to get smaller. And so what they should have been doing is studying the population, seeing that we're not going to have more and more students, and shrinking the population and shrinking the expenses. But they don't want to do that. What they've tried to do is make it up with transfers that they bring in from other school districts. Today, I think we have about 1,600 transfers, something like that. And the issue is that if your community population drops down to 5,500, as I predicted, and you still want to have a school of 8,000, you're going to need 2,000, 2,500 students from outside the district.
Yep.
Now, that may not be a big deal, but again, if you take it one step further, and this is where Eanes has really screwed up, is we need to raise somewhere between 500 million and $1 billion, probably more than $1 billion, to refurbish all of our schools, because we're one of the oldest school districts in Texas. The question to bondholders is going to be, if you're paying on bonds, are you willing to raise 500 million, over $1 billion in debt, bond debt, knowing that a third of your population, the transfer students and their families, are not carrying that bond debt with you? Who's going to vote for that bond? And that puts us in a tough situation. So the school wants to be something it really can't be. And that's where the absence of leadership and clairvoyance, they really need to make the school be the school district it should be for the size of our community. And here we are in this financial calamity as a result.
Yeah. So, I mean, to downsize, what is the solution there? I mean, there's only one high school. Is the solution to maybe close, I don't know, a couple elementary schools, a middle
Yeah.
school? Is it
Yeah.
as simple as that?
Yeah. There's several chess pieces to move. The school is 50 years old, and it needs to look inward and try to figure out what it wants to be for the next 50 years. And what I would see the district having to do, it has to close one of its elementary schools immediately, probably Valley View. And you can repurpose that school for a variety of all kinds of other things. There's plenty of vocational schools that would come in and lease that property, or we could turn it into an institute for AI, or, partner with Elon Musk, or, one of some of these big companies are here in Austin. There's so many things we could do with that asset. So we need to absolutely skinny down the number of schools, redistribute our best teachers. There will be attrition. That's just the way it is. We need to trim down the administration. We have way too much administration bloat going on. But then I think, kind of on a master plan, we have to look at developing the properties that are around Eanes and Westlake High School. We have a lot of contiguous property there. And we should be thinking, if we're in the low times financially, this is actually the best time to invest. And we should take those bond dollars and focus them toward the schools that should remain, to handle a population of 5,500 to 6,000. And I would say it's time to build parking garages that we can monetize. Time to extend the campus and build more like a sports complex, other things like this. Maybe, the campuses of the future, innovate, and, really invest in what the school is going to be as opposed to what it is today, and just come to the realization we are not going to be a school district of 7,500 to 8,000. What's interesting, one last point, this dependence on transfers, what the school district has learned is that we're sort of peaking on our transfers because young families are not going to drive past 2 elementary schools to drop their kid off at the elementary school that's designated as the transfer school. And that's what's going on right now. So the incentive to bring transfer students in has even waned as well. So we are in a very, very tough spot. We can dig out of it, but we have to do it with a kind of a longer investment plan.
Yeah. So, you're talking about I mean, that Pekin's idea with the transfer students coming in, they're not paying those families wouldn't be paying the bonds. I think it's a really interesting, aspect to this that probably a lot of people don't think about. And, again, that's an issue. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how you
Well,
can't force them to pay the bonds, right? So
yeah, it was an issue that I brought to you run a campaign for 90 days,
yeah,
and it's a very complex issue, and it's hard for the voters to digest that concept in such a short amount of time. But it is a real issue, and as a result of my research, now this is top agenda on the board of trustees. They still don't know what to do about it, but if you want to build a business, you don't think about what it looks like today and build it for tomorrow. You think about what you want it to be in 10 years,
yeah,
and you work backwards from that. And again, our board of trustees, nice, well-intentioned people, but they do not have that chutzpah. And you have a leading, district in the state, the most elite district we have, and a lot of other districts around Texas are looking to Westlake to see what they're going to do. And they've done nothing for years and years. But, the key to getting good people to come forward, smart people to come forward, or people with a different type of intelligence, you've got to have fair elections,
yeah.
fair and ethical elections. Otherwise, people, they won't come forward, and you'll continue to have the same type of non-performing board members, or unequipped, unarmed board members that we have here and that are all across the state.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about your experience running for school board and all of that. But before we get there, I wanted to still, talk a little bit about some of the issues facing Eanes and school districts across the state, and the issue of property taxes and Robin Hood.
Yeah.
What do you think about that system? It seems like it's, I don't know, maybe in the online circles and in conversations in person, it seems like it might be on the way out, but I don't really know. It seems like people are
Yeah.
maybe getting tired of it. What do you think?
I think when recapture was designed, I think it's a reasonable concept. In short, what it is that all of the taxable school districts in the state, uh, you get so much per student
Yep.
that is there. And whatever you raise in taxes, that's above the amount you get to keep for the student population that you have to write a check to the state. You give them the difference. You raise the taxes, you keep what you need on a per capita basis, and you send the rest to Texas. And then Texas redistributes it. They call it Robin Hood sometimes.
Yep.
And I think it's a reasonable concept, because you do have, why can't children in a rural district also get the, approximately $6,500 per head? Of course, they should have that. But $6,500, and where recapture is now broken is in a couple ways. First of all, they never envisioned a school district like Eanes to come about, or Highland Park, these super successful, high wealth districts in Texas. I believe that we raise something like $240 million a year in property tax, and we keep something like 80 million of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so for that's not a lot of people are crying a river for all of us rich people up here in Eanes, but the issue they're not looking at is when you send $6,500 per head to a school district in rural Texas, that money goes a long way because the cost of living is different. The cost to hire teachers is different. But if you have it here in a district like Eanes, the cost of living is much higher. The cost of labor is much higher. And we're a kind of a small landlocked community. You have to pay teachers to commute great distances to come and work at our school for the same wage that someone might earn elsewhere. And it's just not enough money. So there needs to be an adjustment either on the amount of money school districts get to keep. Perhaps there's a cap on what they contribute, and they can keep a certain amount so we can afford the things we need to give a quality level of education, or it needs to be restructured,
Yep.
completely rethought. But recapture, it's not working the way it was intended. It's sort of like affirmative action for schools in a way. Um, it just needs to be rethought and adjusted, changed.
Yeah, for sure. So you ran for school board as we've discussed, and I want to talk to you about that experience. You also have, my understanding, a lot of experience just as a parent before running for school board, going and speaking to the board about, like you said, you had the foresight to sort of see some of these problems on the horizon, and going and talking to them. What is the as a parent going and talking to the board? Is there that engagement? Do you feel like they listen to parents or only some parents? Is it really helpful to go talk?
Um, I think again, you have a group of we have a group of leaders here. Again, well-intentioned people, um, and you can talk at them, but I don't think there is definitely not enough engagement, back with parents. We have a population here of some pretty wealthy people. There is a high degree of entitlement amongst the parents, no question about it, and that's difficult to handle sometimes. But our board, most all of our board, even this last election, I don't think there was maybe one board member that actually had students in the board and in the school district. So I think the engagement was limited because they're not having the same experience a lot of parents are now. Their children have gone through the system. They're not dealing with this. And so the engagement is not there. I think the way they run their business meetings they have to run them the way they are. So parents go and they stand up and speak and complain, and the board is obligated to do nothing but listen. But I don't think the follow through. If you're a parent and you've got different ideas, or you have sort of moral and ethical beliefs that are different than what's kind of the undercurrent of the educational curriculum today, I would say you're sort of shunned or ignored. There absolutely is bias there, but those are kind of political terms. I think uh, I would just agree that the level of engagement is not there. Our superintendent has done a wonderful job to engage parents, but the school board, I don't think, has followed his lead.
Yeah. So, you have that experience as a parent talking to the school board, and, at times it feels like they're not engaging. But so you run for school board, and, this is officially a non politically affiliate. Like you're not running as a
Nonpartisan.
Republican. Yeah, it's nonpartisan. You're not running as a Republican or a Democrat. You're just a person in the district, perhaps a parent, perhaps not. You are. Um, and I'm wondering, in your experience, is that sort of how it went?
I now know, after this is the first time I've run for anything, I think. Um, I now know, after running for school board, why good Americans, good, smart, intelligent Americans do not come forward and get into politics. Um, we ran a fantastic campaign, an ethical, a professional, a buttoned up campaign, really focused on the issues of, teacher pay, the school district and its future, parental issues and concerns, all the things, all the ideas that had resonance in the community. The ran against two opponents. One of them, Catherine Walker, ran, I think, a very good campaign. Great lady, nice lady, smart. But the other campaign, Kelly Marwell, you know, they never engaged on one single issue, and it was awful. I mean, it was just smear, 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 nonstop. And as a result, I ended up losing by 103 votes, and we left it all out on the field. But we have another board member that now has is in the clique, but has absolutely no remarkable business experience whatsoever. And we're going to get more of the same as a result. But The election was the election. It was a hell of an experience. Like I said, I know now why people don't run. And I think I can do more things from outside the board of trustees, frankly, and that's kind of what I'm pushing for.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're talking about, all right, now you know why people like good people don't come forward. What's it sounds like what you're talking about is like personal attacks and, just kind of turning into a nasty campaign
Yeah.
where you're not talking about the issues. What's you talk about looking forward into the future and, we have another person that's just part of the clique. What is looking forward into the future, what does that do? I mean, is it the next person, let's say, I don't know, me or, someone else in the community wants to run for the office. What's the process look like for that person? What do they have to look forward to if nothing changes?
Well, that's what I'm trying to change. I want to, after I've learned what you actually go through as a candidate and seeing 4 or 5 other really smart people, good people here in our community in previous elections just get assassinated. I'm really committed to trying to create an environment where I can answer that question, where we have fair and ethical elections. And, what I'm committed to right now, I've really got like a 4 or 5 prong program or strategy to, at least in our community, to clear a space for people to enter into the race without having to be worried about being harassed. I've got, as you may or may know, I have a lawsuit currently against my opponent for some awful things that they did during the election. I'm getting some time up at the state house and meeting with legislators and their staff, talking about improving this thing called the CFCP. Have you ever heard of this before?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. It's called the Code of Fair Campaign Practices. Every candidate is required to sign it. It's something that the Texas Ethics Commission issued some years ago. And if you don't sign it, you're kind of chastised for not signing it. And everyone signs it. But the things on here, I will conduct my campaign openly and publicly and limit attacks. I'll not use character defamation or whispering campaigns, libel or slander, negative prejudice. I mean, it just goes on and on. All the things that an ethical person would do
Yeah.
are kind of on this document. Well, you sign this document, and then what I learned, it's meaningless. It has absolutely no teeth. My opponents broke every single thing on the issue, everything on the list, and there's no recourse. There's no penalty. There's no suffering. There's no violation of a law. Nothing. And so I'm dragging this up to the state to say, look, it's time that we improve this. We have to improve this so that if something is violated, the only option to a parent is not going and filing $1 million lawsuit like I had to do in this instance. There has to be more there to give good people confidence that not only is the candidate going to act properly, but everyone that works for their campaign is going to act properly. And, when you live in a world of social media and, in my case, they stood up these anonymous Instagram accounts and they did this to other campaign candidates for years past. They just do horrible things, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So I want to see the gap narrowed. I want to see those control edges better defined. So again, parents can step forward knowing that everyone is going to act properly. And this is important for local races. Now, it may be different. It's a different ballgame at the state level or at the federal level, of course. It's a dog-eat-dog world. But down here in these local elections, where you really need intellectual capital to do great things for students and teachers, we can't keep putting the same type of board members, on the trustee seat.
Yeah. And I mean, just to add to that, I think that the local smaller elections, especially for a small school district like Eanes, right? This is, as in every sense of the word, a community, right? And
Yeah,
there's
everybody.
yeah, everybody. If there's a smear
Yeah.
campaign, a president, right? he's not going to see every single person in America. But something happens to you or another candidate for
Oh
school
yeah.
board, you're going to see other people that your friends, and maybe they kind of, start to treat you a little bit different in the car line to pick up the kids or whatever, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. I mentioned the strategies we've got cooking. We have the legal strategy, obviously, because we feel we've been harmed. That's going to work its own way out. We're going to, go to the state house to try to make positive change. We've learned from this, and we want to protect future parents. We've also got a lot of PR going on. We're spending a good amount of time educating parents on the types of things that occurred in the last election and previous elections. Here in Eanes, we have something we refer to as the Westlake Smear Cartel. It's a group of people that come out every year to do these sorts of things. And, we're really focused on, again, creating an environment where they can't pop their head up. And I even went so far as I've hired an outside, this group of international PIs that can identify the owners and operators of anonymous accounts.
Yeah.
And so we're setting up this watchdog program here now and for the future election, so that if there is any funny business going on that may be out of a candidate's control, or somehow, you're right. We all the things that were said, we have to see these people, and our kids have to deal with other kids that parents. I mean, just it was an awful, awful thing, and very, very hurtful and completely unnecessary. So my wife and I we're just laser focused to make a difference, so that we can, this next election coming up and the ones to follow are fair and ethical, and people that are participating in the campaign understand, like you said, when you say something about somebody in this little community and in many other communities across Texas, it can have a terrible effect on the quality of your life. And the things that people have come up to my wife and talked to her about, the rumors, and it's really awful. And to try to protect your kids from that stuff, it's just unnecessary. So that's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah. So I guess just I mean, it sounds like you're using your own money to do all this.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. We we're committed. We're fortunate. We've got a balance sheet where we can spend any amount of money on legal fees, on the PR systems and people to help us get the word out, to get up to the state house and to really affect change. And I think the folks here in our community that have been doing this for year after year, part of the Westlake Smear Cartel, they kind of did it to the wrong guy now. And we're like a dog that gets their teeth into a bone. We're not going to let this one go. We're going to take it to the end. We're using all of our own money. If we are awarded something in the lawsuit, we will pay first all of our donors back, because that's a big part people don't realize. You raise $150,000 from donors, and when you play these games and these tricks, and voters are defrauded, I mean, that's hard-earned money that people gave to your campaign. So if we get any award, we're going to pay back all of our donors. We'll pay our legal fees, and then the rest we're going to donate to charity. So, my wife and I are committed to do this. We don't need outside resources, and we're going to follow and see where it goes.
yeah. So I guess final thought here. You mentioned you're going to go up to the state house and try to talk to lawmakers, make some real positive changes. And I think it brings a lot of credibility that you're doing this on your own dime with your own time. Is there what do you want them to hear? If they're listening right now, like what should they expect? What do you want them to hear? What's your message?
I think there's an opportunity for state legislators to create a wall, where the mud raking and the terrible things that we see happen in elections at the federal and state level, that, back rooms and bare knuckles, hardcore political stuff. I think there's an opportunity to wall that off from local elections, and again, create incentives for moral, ethical, quality of life incentives for candidates to come forward without the fear of these activities, these types of strategies and evil kind of tactics to find their way down. And so that's, if we restructure that, fair, campaign practices, a document and really strengthen it, that's going to go a long way to creating that wall. If we can put some penalties behind it, it's going to make that wall even higher. And if we expand the people that are responsible to it, all the people that work on their campaigns and help these local candidates, I think it's going to be easy to do. And, you're not going to get a lot of pushback. We really have to, because if you do that, then you're really working to protect our children. And if you can protect our children and make the schools function better, again, by getting the right people to come forward on these boards, that's going to create a difference in the quality of the education. It's going to create the value of these school districts as a franchise in the community. And it's just going to make it a healthier Texas if we can do this. And I think it would be an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to end. Aaron Silva, founder of Texas Education Project 103. You have any websites or social media you want to plug?
Coming soon. Yeah, you mentioned Texas Education Project 103. This is going to be a really neat organization. We're going to start it here locally, but it has statewide implications. And our goal really is to, focus on paying teachers, promoting parents, and with an undercurrent and a key focus on fair elections, fair and ethical elections. And if we can do that and really advocate for that, then I think we're going to get things changed here, as I've said before. So more coming on Texas Education Project 103.
Awesome. Well, Aaron Silva, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad.